After yesterday's events, I wanted to make a video discussing the Capitol riots that took place in the capital of America, Washington, D.C. on Wednesday, January 6th, following a Trump rally where speeches were given continuing the baseless claims of voter fraud in senatorial and presidential elections of 2020 and 2021 with the Georgia runoff. Trump's supporters and Nazi white supremacist goons stormed the Capitol building where pipe bombs were found, explosives were set off, a sniper rifle was found, Molotov cocktails were found, windows were broken. These goons took out layers of Capitol Police reinforcement to get into the Capitol building, to breach the rooms of elected officials, including that of Nancy Pelosi, to sit in the seat of Senator Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. They reached congressional floors and they took souvenirs such as podiums, a letter from Nancy Pelosi's desk. These are federal offenses. All of this occurred on January 6th, the day that Congress is certifying the Electoral College votes to make official President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, America's next president and vice president. This comes as no surprise for many reasons. One being that for weeks and now months, Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, and company have been perpetuating baseless claims of electoral fraud. Every case that they've brought to the federal judges have been rejected. There has been no evidence. Affidavits only include people's personal opinions without any evidence suggesting that there was voter fraud. And in fact, it was found that there were 3 dead mothers who voted, and they all voted for Donald Trump, not Joe Biden. So Donald Trump and company have managed to perpetuate these lies so that they could galvanize their most rabid supporters and then organize a rally in which Trump and his criminal mob get these people hyped up and ready to fight, ready to interfere with democracy, some of democracy's most basic practices in America. During the rally speeches, we heard statements such as trial by combat and take names and kick asses. These are commands. These are statements that are meant to incite the violence and aggressive behavior that we all witnessed yesterday at our nation's capital. And this is all coming from the party of patriotism, the party that really wants to enfranchise and not disenfranchise freedom of speech, freedom of the individual. It's a lie. It's a sham. These people are lies, and they are shams. It comes as no surprise. Donald Trump told us the date of the rally. We knew what was going to happen. Anyone who's acting surprised is choosing to be ignorant and naive. And they're probably enablists. This country has publicly and privately funded this type of white supremacy. And this country has perpetuated this type of terrorism. White terrorism such as this has been pervasive in this country since the United States of America's inception. And it should be referred to as nothing less than treason and terrorism. Now, during these events, Ashley Babbitt, a U.S. veteran, she was in the Air Force, a mother and a wife, was shot and killed in cold blood during these protests. She was a protester. She was a criminal. She was breaking into Nancy Pelosi's office and was shot in the chest as a consequence. It is sad that a life was lost due to this ignorance. But what I find more sad is that Ashley Babbitt chose to put a bigoted ideology before her husband, before her children, before her own life, and before her own business. And as a result, she chose to die on the hill she died on, and that was Capitol Hill. I don't see her as a victim, or any of these people as victims. Victims of misinformation. These people were not duped. These people have evil conjured in their spirit, and they exorcised those demons yesterday on Capitol Hill. I do not see them as victims. I see them as humans with the ability to make individual choices. And they see themselves that way also. Because who cares more for individual choice and freedom of choice than Republican supporters? They are no victims. It's just sad that a mother and a wife would put this type of ignorance and bigotry before her own family and the wealth that she's building for them in this country. That in itself is the power of white supremacy as an ideology, the power of racism, the power of fascism, the power of indoctrinating and brainwashing these people in this country. It makes them so rabid that they put people like Donald Trump before their very own family. And speaking of fascism, there have been reports that Antifa infiltrated these riots. These reports are false. They're coming from the same facial recognition technology companies that can't even distinguish between a polar bear and a wolf. These claims have found to be false. The two individuals that were recognized, one has been found on a Nazi doxing site in which Nazis are doxed, meaning identified by groups like Antifa, so that people in the local communities can be aware of who they are around. It's for their safety. And the other was found to be someone who was at other right-wing extreme protests. The attempt to bring Antifa into the conversation by this facial recognition technology company and even Tucker Carlson on Fox News. It's so pathetic, and to me it is continuing acts of treason against this country. Because for all of you who don't know, Antifa stands for anti-fascist. And though I wasn't alive at the time, I know we all have learned about the Holocaust. We've learned about what fascism is. We've learned and have been proud of the fact that our veterans fought fascists. Fascism has no rightful place in a democratic republic. To be anti-fascist is to embody the spirit that is the United States of America. So isn't it quite ironic that the Party of America, its political pundits associated with it, and its most rabid supporters who are willing to die for this country and the flag, are villainizing and trying to get labeled as domestic terrorists, Antifa, anti-fascists, a group that represents what America is supposed to be. Anti-fascist. Why is that? It is because these people who stormed the Capitol building are not responding to some sort of financial or economic despair. These people who are storming the Capitol building, committing acts of treason and terrorism, committing acts of violence against people who have been elected into office legally, they are trying to perpetuate fascism. They are fascists. They want to overthrow our democracy and put in place an authoritarian, totalitarian, fascist state. Now, 52 arrests have been reported in association with these riots yesterday. What's interesting is the FBI is now tweeting and building websites wanting to have people tip them off on who these individuals are. It's interesting to me because if we compare the response to these riots yesterday and the Black Lives Matter protests and riots of the summers of 2020, we will see that tactics are very different. Now, protesters and rioters were motivated by victims who lost their lives to police brutality, such as George Floyd, such as Breonna Taylor, such as Jacob Blake. The list goes on, because killing brown people in this country is now as American as cherry pie. People were responding to the violence against African Americans in this country by the hands of police. And they were met with tear gas, rubber bullets, and brutality for actual peaceful protests. Now, there were criminals present as well. Criminals with behavior similar to what we saw yesterday. Burning buildings, fighting the cops, criminal behavior. And both are wrong. But I find it interesting the great lengths that the military and law enforcement agencies in this country were mobilized to deal with criminals who were violent as a response to the victimization of brown people in this country versus white Nazi supremacists trying to overthrow democracy. There are images of Capitol Police taking selfies with these criminals who stormed the Capitol building yesterday. You can see videos of Capitol Police opening the barricades graciously, feeling no threats to their lives for these criminals, for these terrorists. How were they able to get as far in the Capitol building as they were when the National Guard was informed and supposed to be mobilized ahead of this rally? Now you take a look at the response to the BLM, George Floyd Breonna Taylor protests, in which people were being dragged off the streets in unmarked cars with their civil rights being violated. And it was consistent, the brutality that they faced. A woman, juxtapose that with a woman who stormed Capitol Hill being hand-walked down the stairs while she has a cell phone in the other hand. And she's being hand-walked by Capitol Police. What's different? We all know the difference. It doesn't have to be said. And I brought up the BLM protests, and I do want to take this time to say that I agree with the sentiment that motivated those protests. However, I do think that there is a better response to police brutality in America than physically protesting the streets during a global pandemic that has infected tens of millions and killed hundreds of thousands in this country alone. There are more effective ways than being violent. I get the sentiment, but there are more effective ways to go about it, such as pushing for specific policies, such as a financial and organized financial assault on corporations and this government itself. Minorities still make up a sizable chunk, a significant amount of consumer money in this economy. Selectively using our power in the economy in an organized way to force the hand of our government systems into signing proposals that better our own material conditions and the wealth and wellness of future generations of the individuals in our community is always going to be better than burning a police precinct, no matter how just it feels. It's no different than these white supremacists, these fascists, these terrorists trying to overthrow democracy, reaching congressional floors, and still not getting their hands on the certified electoral college votes. Now, I want to say that there are no heroes in this situation. And while I'm fine with applauding and recognizing the good in some, such as Republican Mitt Romney, Lindsey Graham, and a few others for stepping out and saying that President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris will be inaugurated and we should accept the truth and tell the truth to the people. Those are all admirable things, so much as it's admirable that you're doing the job that you were elected to do. It's nothing more. You're no hero. You're no patriot. You're doing your job. And why these people are no heroes? Because they have allowed this behavior to go on. They've allowed the fire starters. They've gaslit these fires, and they are now Sitting back, it's throwing the rock and hiding the hand. Mitt Romney was the only Republican who decided to impeach Donald Trump. Lindsey Graham was just recently caught on the phone trying to pressure Secretary of State of Georgia to overturn the election by throwing out votes. Mitt Romney has been behind many of Trump's policies and his ignorance. He has stood in the Republican Party as just a ball and chain supporter of the antics. So you can't allow the fire to be started and then scream fire once explosions happen and act as if you are not just as culpable. You're an ableist. And an ableist who I want to call out even more is Barack Obama. And why I want to do that is because earlier in the video I mentioned that the type of white terrorism that we saw yesterday has been sustained and funded, propagandized, and perpetuated in this country since its inception. An example of that is Barack Obama and his presidency. During his presidency, the FBI notified Barack Obama that there was a growing and rising accelerated threat of white terrorism in this country. Now, if you are like me and put together basic patterns from the news, it's no surprise. Well, duh. If you know any history of America, it's no surprise. Duh. But let's point out some of them. The fact that, do we ever see any African American or Latino mass shooters in this country? Before COVID-19, if you guys don't remember, we had a different type of pandemic. It was I can't go to a concert, a hotel, a restaurant, a school that I'm forced to go to by law without fear of being shot. And that's whether I'm in kindergarten, high school, college, post-grad. We were going through that pandemic. I can't worship my chosen religion without fear of someone pulling out an assault rifle and killing more than 20 people. COVID at least protected us a bit from that. That's white terrorism. All of these gun violence, these massacres, white terrorism. White males have been the perpetrators. What more evidence do you need? In knowing, with common sense, what the FBI notified Barack Obama during his presidency, that white terrorism would be a growing threat. And it should be ranked as high level, something to be prioritized more by the FBI. What did Barack Obama do? He made them less of a threat than black terrorists. That's what he instructed the FBI to do. Now, there are many claims for many ways that I think are just and accurate with Obama not doing anything for the African American community. One thing he could have done at a bare minimum is protect us. Yeah, I would have liked student debt relief. Yeah, I would like reparations. But the least you could do is value the African American community that put you in office enough to protect them from the white terrorists that have terrorized their families, ruined their wealth, and broke apart their communities since they were forced to come to this country and build the wealth that is this country today. We can't even get that type of respect and dignity from our own kind. Ridiculous. And it pisses me off in so many ways. But moving on, I want to talk about some of the flamethrowers. And by flamethrowers, I mean the people who were fanning the flames of what happened yesterday. Tucker Carlson, you're a fascist. Any media pundit that has contributed to the actions that we saw from these rabid Trump supporters yesterday, you are culpable. You don't get to wash your hands clean. Tucker Carlson is definitely on that list. And it's a shame because he's intelligent, and I would like to be able to listen to someone who's intelligent, give a healthy and informed perspective on this country. I cannot watch any segment of him because it is so riddled with falsities and dog whistles to the base that is the people we saw out and about yesterday. It is anti-democratic. Definitely these senators who still, after yesterday's events, returned to congressional floors and wanted to object the electoral college votes of states such as Arizona, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. And I'm talking Senator Josh Hawley. Senator Josh Hawley has become a fave of these supposed unicorns on the political spectrum who identify themselves as right-wing populists. It makes no sense. You're not a populist. Oh, but you come out and say, hey, I agree with giving $2,000 checks. Well, where were you whenever we were trying to hold the vote on the defense bill so that people could get a vote on those $2,000 checks? Oh no, you were too busy walking to the Capitol building holding up the white power fist to the supporters you knew you've helped galvanize and would become violent to help you overturn the election results. The people you want to see support you in your future campaign runs. The people you want to know that they have your allyship. With him and what he did in holding up that white power fist and being in Congress and on the congressional floors objecting the electoral college votes and the certification of those electoral college votes, while simultaneously Trump's rabid terrorist followers are infiltrating the Capitol building. To me, there has never been a more illustrative moment in modern time that perfectly and precisely depicts the infiltration of America's law enforcement and governmental agencies by white supremacy. Because think about it. You have the physical and aggressive attacks on democracy happening while you have legislative attacks on democracy happening simultaneously. That is coordinated. That is organized. That is terroristic. And I hope that people see it, because I don't have much faith that the FBI and our government agencies that have already been infiltrated by this and allow things like this to happen will give this country the justice that it needs as a response to these Capitol riots. I mentioned that there have been arrests, and I don't even want to list names of those people because I think that America has a problem with iconizing evil doers. These people should not be icons. They shouldn't get 60 Minute with Barbara Walters or Diane Sawyer segments. Isn't it a bit ridiculous that someone can commit a federal offense, can go into Nancy Pelosi's office, steal a letter, leave a quarter, kick his feet up on her desk, walk out, not shot, not bruised, not battered, and have an interview, a video released by local news? Where was George Floyd's 60-minute interview? He didn't get one. He was killed on the spot. But these terrorists, they get interviews. They get press releases. They get the ability to spread their propaganda. Because that's what that is. That's telling every little white boy in America that you can commit these federal crimes, you can commit these treasonous crimes, and you get to be famous. You get your 15 minutes. You get your name etched in America's history. Look at what I did. You get to be proud. And people of other communities, they aren't given the same grace. And they shouldn't be. No one should be. And the fact that there are people of specific communities who are allowed that opportunity, it's shameful. It's shameful and it's deliberate. And still, it's unsurprising. And I really hope that people are awakened by these moments and become more aware of how they allow this type of ideology to persist in America. Even when it comes down to just being aware of the media that you consume, the music that you listen to, the movies you choose to watch, the businesses you choose to support. Is there any surprise that people can be galvanized in this way? Whenever the movie Joker is heralded at the Oscars, why is it in America that evildoers become such great icons? That pretty much sums up what I have to say about the events that occurred. And what I hope moving forward is that justice happens. And I hope that people will start listening to people that they've never listened to before when they are telling you about the injustices in America. It's nothing new, so wake up. Share this video. People need to see it. People need to hear this message. People need to have conversations about what took place. It does not need to be forgotten. It doesn't need to be a hashtag that happens in a day and is forgotten tomorrow.